All right, we're live. This is episode 72 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. As always, let's kick it off with one of our latest reviews here. I lost it. Let me cue it up. This is coming from Sean Poser. This is a general contractor out of British Columbia, Canada. So besides it being a great app for my needs as a deck and fence contracting company, the support and open dialogue with the developers has been unquestionably the best experience I've had, bar none. They listen, assist, and go way beyond any other customer service experience I've ever had. Thanks to the team, and looking forward to working on the website development side of things next. Great review. Thank you so much, Sean Poser, for that
Thank you,
one.
Sean. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Shout out
And
to contractors in BC as well. We have a lot
yes,
of clients out there, and we appreciate everyone. John, how you doing? Just me and you today?
yeah, doing good, man. Doing good.
Holding
Just to
it
touch
down?
base. Yeah, just to touch base on that review. I just noticed. I think that's one thing people appreciate a lot is our customer support. We try to, get back to everybody as soon as we can, and we're extremely prompt. But I think the biggest thing is just listening to people's needs and always try to work within it, right? Always using their creativity, what they need, and trying to fit it into our software where it benefits everybody and it works within the flow, right? In the actual flow of construction, right? So again, just another shout out to Sean, but I love seeing those reviews, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to get into any updates we have in the pipe with Jobtable? One of the big ones is recurring invoices, which we've been working on. We're very close to launching that. This is going to be very, especially if you're like a landscaping company or any company that does recurring work, recurring invoices, maintenance plans, lawn care, where you bill out monthly, weekly, whatever it is. You can currently do like accomplish that in Jobtable, but what we have hopefully in the next couple of weeks is going to really automate and streamline that whole entire process, and it's going to be a real game changer for any contracting company that does any type of recurring maintenance or service. So stay tuned for that. Recurring jobs and invoices coming right up.
100%.
All right. So let's get into it. A couple of interesting topics I wanted to discuss. I want to kick it off with this conversation I had with a client last week. I'm not going to name the client, but we're just having a good discussion on warranties. And if you're a reputable company, a reputable contractor, you stand behind your work, you obviously provide warranty on your work, right? And so that led me to kind of dig into some numbers. And so I found some stats. This is specifically for the HVAC industry, but it's very similar across the board. So a typical, let's say, HVAC company, mid-sized shop doing 1 to 2 million a year with about 1,500 to 2,000 service calls in a year. The average callback rate or warranty rate is about 5%. Okay, so that equates to about 110 service callbacks in a year. Now, if you break down what that means numbers wise, so each callback costs roughly $650 once you add, your tech labor, your office, your insurance, your truck, your overhead, uh, also the lost opportunity of a paid job that you didn't get run instead. So if you run the math on that shop, that's about $71,500 a year that bleeds out through callbacks and warranty services. So think about that. That's a huge number. So in that same source, the same data I was reading, if you drop that callback rate from 5 down to 2%, you save roughly 50,000 a year. So I want to open it up there. So on your experience, John, does anyone, how many contractors do you think actually know what these numbers are in their business, or do they just kind of like bake them in, consider it like a cost of business? Like,
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're right there. It's the common saying, it's the cost of doing business. Now, this topic, and just for all of our listeners, I never know what you have queued up, and I think this is what makes our conversations organic.
That's true, by the way. Johnny
Yeah.
has no idea.
No idea what he has
Neither
queued up.
Charlie.
Yeah. Nobody. Even when we have guests on, like we typically like we don't know the topics. Like Kosta, just yeah, you do a phenomenal job. But getting back onto the topic here, this one hits close to home because we're dealing with something right now with a callback, and we've been back 6 times to this job. Now, you know, you talked about HVAC having these callbacks. The reality is a lot of these callbacks have to do to the equipment. So for people to understand, when you buy a piece of equipment, sure, you have warranty through that manufacturer. But the reality is because you are the company that supplied and installed it, so you essentially sold them the product. Now, obviously, some contractors are, you know, they gear towards one manufacturer more than the other because, you know, whether they have a better deal, they have a better markup on it, or they just like their equipment better, or they're, you know, even if it comes down to fixtures or whatever it may be, and this could go across the board, electricians, plumbers, HVAC guys, doesn't matter. You're not the one, I always tell people, you're not the one building it and selling it to them, right? So when you just gave those numbers, it's crazy because, yeah, we just look at it like, it's just a cost of doing business. But the reality is it shouldn't be, right? Because let's say somebody's doing $500,000 a year, okay, and they get, and they're installing equipment and they're getting, let's say that number goes up to 10%, and it's not the install. Let's say, and this has happened many times, let's say the manufacturer has a bad run of rooftops, of furnaces, ACs, faucets, toilets. Who does it impact the most? It's the contractor, and it makes the contractor look bad. So the reason I say this is because, yeah, on those callbacks, the last 6-7 callbacks for the same issue on a hot water tank, which this hot water tank's like a $50,000 unit that we supplied and installed, I'm probably out of pocket $3,000 on this. And there's nothing I can bill for it. And I'm arguing with the manufacturer, and I'm getting the emails and I'm getting the calls into my office, and people are looking at us like we did something wrong. And we finally, through a lot of arguing with the manufacturer, got them to send out a technician because it's a brand new tank and the internals are all messed up, and they've asked us to do this and troubleshoot this, and they sent us a part and try changing this out, and nothing is working. And the reality is that we look bad. We're taking the hit on these callbacks, and the manufacturer sold their unit. Sure, they had to send out a tech, but we're the ones that it makes us look bad, right? To a point, like I've had arguments now with the contractor, and I literally told him, I said, guys, number one, your engineers spec this. I did not spec it. This is a bid and spec job. So we supplied the hot water tank that your engineers spec'd. Okay? Brand new tank, installed, you know, gas is done, been, you know, it's vented properly, water in, water out, very simple install. It doesn't matter if it's this brand, that brand, they all typically get installed the same way. And now I've had an argument with them because, yes, it's my responsibility to get them back, but now the manufacturer has like a 2-week time, and this place has no hot water. So I can't tell you the amount of hours of calling in, dealing with the supplier that we bought it from, them calling, you know, bringing this to their higher ups. So when I hear this stuff, like I want a lot of people to understand, a lot of the callbacks is not the contractor's fault. Sure, we're all human. We do make mistakes sometimes. And that is, yeah, it's the cost of doing business, right? If I installed something faulty, okay, sorry, come back, correct it. You know, that is the cost of doing business. But I just feel like, and I hope everybody listening understands what I'm saying, the onus has to go back to these manufacturers, because it's like they're free and clear. They design the unit, they manufacture it. They pump them out. People are buying them. But who's the one that's facing, like you said, Kosta, after you just run those numbers on 5% on $1 million company, like that's crazy. It's literally insane.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never considered that the manufacturer and at the end of the day you're the one taking the hit for it. You have to deal with the client and you know eat the cost in a lot of cases, unless you do what you just described and put it back on the supplier. But how many people do you think are actually doing that?
Well, a lot of people don't know that they can do that, right? But the reality is look, man, on a $50,000 tank, like we're not talking if it was $1,000 like little tank, for the amount of times that we went back, I would have just said, buy a new fucking tank, swap it out, and like I'm done with it.
Yeah,
But on 50,000, 100,000, $200,000 piece of equipment, even for the HVAC guys, and I see this time in, time out again, right? They go and install a furnace, all of a sudden something's happening, and the motherboard on a brand new unit, the motherboard has to be swapped out. Oh, the heat exchanger, oh, the this, oh, the that. It's like, okay, who's going to pay us for this, right?
yeah, yeah. So that kind of leads me to the next part of it. No matter how you slice it, though, whether it's a supplier, whether it's a technician's fault, or whatever the case is, I think the missing component here, which I don't think a lot of companies account for, is like properly tracking the costs involved, right? If you were to interview 10 contractors, how many of them do you think actually know what their warranty costs are?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good point, Costa, because I can speak for myself, and again, drop in the comments anybody listening to this that does deal with this on regular occurrence. My motto is, look, I don't want to call back. So if there's a problem, it's like just go and fix it. Like send somebody out. I don't want any client to feel like we didn't do a good job, like we didn't install something properly. So when you get those calls, what is your main thing to do? You just rush. You don't care about the money at that point, right? Because you're more worried about your brand, your image, like everything that's involved with running a company properly. So yeah, the reality is I'm a victim of it. And but just by you saying that, like it kind of like raises red flags where it's like we should be tracking that, and start, also tracking it per manufacturer, and maybe having a conversation at the end of the year with that manufacturer and saying, hey, I bought X amount from you. These are my callbacks. This is the costs I've incurred. But the reality is too, look, I've been into arguments with manufacturers. I don't want to name this one that I hate to the ends of the earth. And I remember it was a massive order. We're talking over $250,000 worth of equipment. And when it came, there were so many things wrong, just like right out of the box. And it caused a lot of delays to a point like we were getting back charged for something that's out of our control, right? And we go to the manufacturer and they literally looked at us. They're like, no, you're right. But our higher ups basically say, there's nothing we can do. And if you feel a certain way, like take us to court. And you just sit there and you just say to yourself, this is David. Yeah, that's David versus Goliath, right? They literally told you we're a multi-billion-dollar corporation and everything you said is correct and it is wrong on our part.
Prove it.
Too bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, look, the good news is, I think, and you know, there's a very easy way to track this stuff, which I think is the missing component here. And I'm going to share my screen and kind of show you how this could be done right inside Jobtable in this case, but any kind of software for anyone, even if you're not using Jobtable, just to get an idea. So what I would do in Jobtable, I'm actually going to create a video for this to put on YouTube because I think this could be very helpful for anyone. But let's say most of the time, if it's a warranty, if it's a callback, it's a job that's completed, it's a completed or archived job. So you're just going to find the job inside Jobtable here. Let's just say this one. And what I would do is just come into job costing here. So you track your expenses. And I would simply just add a category here called, warranty cost or warranty labor, right? And, I'm going to send myself out, or the employee, put in what you pay them per hour. They're there for 5 hours, and you put in that cost. So now you really start getting the true expenses and cost and profit for this job, rather than just, letting it just float into thin air, right? At least you're tracking that particular cost to the job, so you start knowing your true profit and expenses for that job, right?
Yeah, and
So very easy way to track that.
that's actually brilliant. And I would actually go back, like even that warranty labor, if you can edit that for a second. I know a lot of people are listening, so sorry for this. Anybody watching, like edit that for a sec, cost, and see the vendor.
Yeah.
So like especially for HVAC, plumbers,
Yeah,
electricians,
exactly. Yeah.
start putting the vendor there. So at the end of the
Yeah.
year, when you go into the reports and you start seeing, warranty,
Yeah.
and you see, whatever the manufacturer is, and you see it over and over and over again, you can tally obviously how much your warranty claims were just by buying one manufacturer on multiple jobs. And I would have the conversation with your supplier and just be like, look, guys, I've installed 7 panels from, ABC, electric panels, and I've had, 6 callbacks on them, and it's cost me $1,500. I've given you guys $20,000 this year. Like, what are you guys going to do for me? Like, how are you guys going to make this up to me?
Yeah, exactly. And when you have the real numbers, real data to show them, rather than just ballparking it, because again, I don't think many companies are tracking this stuff, and very important to do so, because now you have some data which you can use as leverage when you're having these discussions, right? Because then it just becomes a he said, she said type of
Yeah,
game.
and even in there, you can add pictures too, right? So just make sure you
Exactly.
add your pictures, because that's why I say this one hits close to home, because I'm dealing with something right now, and I can't tell you the countless hours of the people in the office, trying to call the manufacturer, then getting the supplier that we bought it from involved, and then getting their higher ups at the supplier, and it just became this whole clusterfuck over something where it's like, guys, we spent $50,000 on a tank. You guys respect on this, right? It's not like I recommended this. If I recommended this, sure, there's another discussion, because it's like, okay, I'll never recommend this manufacturer again, because it kind of screwed me and it cost me a lot of money, right? But the reality is that manufacturer, if it's spec'd on another job, I'm going to have to use them. Now, with that manufacturer in place, because of the way they dealt with this situation, every time moving forward, I will try an alternate on that. Because I didn't like the customer support. It was horrible. And a lot of people have to understand, as contractors, we are also clients. Because I bought that tank and I had to supply and install it to my client, which is the end user. They have a problem. They're not calling the manufacturer, they're calling me. And then I have to deal with them. So essentially, I am their client. Yeah. And that customer service was horrible. And I would not want my client to deal with that, because we both have to deal with it. We're both in the same boat, right? So, yeah, it's crazy just to see those stats on how much they lose. Because, like you said, on a $1-2 million company, if it's costing you $75,000 a year in callbacks, it's a lot of fucking money, man.
Yeah, no, that's why I thought this was an interesting topic that I think a lot of companies could relate to. Because the numbers are real. Like these are real costs that get eaten up from these callbacks, and they do happen. They are. It's unavoidable in a lot of cases, but I think that the main theme for me is you got to properly track this stuff.
And let me ask you, just on a side note of this, you as a homeowner too, Kosta. So you call somebody and you say, hey, I want to replace my AC, right? So you get 2-3 quotes, just like normal. You pick the guy you feel comfortable with. He comes, he supplies, he installs. Let's say a week later, your AC goes down. Be honest. What is your initial thought in your head?
It's like, oh shit, this company that installed it messed up. They're the first person I'm going to call to fix it.
Okay. So now they call you. So let's further that conversation. So now they call you. You call them, and you say, hey, man, I just paid you guys to do this, and it's not working. right? They send a tech out. Obviously, it's an inconvenience to you. They send a tech out, and all of a sudden, they tell you, oh, sorry, the blade inside is damaged by the manufacturer. It's going to take 3 days to get it. What is your image of that company? Be honest.
Well, look, I mean, if they're handling it, like I get it. Like, if it's a blade, at least if they're gonna order the blade and yeah, it's gonna take 3 days, like yeah, it's annoying. But at the end of it, if they fix it, they're back, they do what they have to do, I would appreciate their service. Now, if they come back and saying, oh, it's out of our hands, it's a warranty, you have to call the manufacturer directly, I will never use that company ever again.
Now, how crazy is that? And that's fair. That's fair from a homeowner's point of view. Now, how crazy is that? Is that they're going to lose business because of the manufacturer's issue. So we have manufacturers that we supply and install. And again, we do a lot of bid and tender, right? So bid and spec, which this is what the engineer has selected. They don't want nothing else. Okay? So how crazy is that? Is that they're going to lose a future potential client in the future just because that one box that they went to go pick up had a defect and it has affected their business. How crazy is that?
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, though, just to counter that, I think that applies to every single business. Even like use Jobtable. Like we're a software company. We rely on a lot of third-party vendors to, to run Jobtable. For example, servers, right? If our server company has issues, which we have no control over, and it happens, Gmail goes down, Apple goes down for whatever reason. Like if a server goes down for a couple hours, which again is out of our control, it's the same thing. The company, the company, our clients could care less about the server company. They're on us, you know? And so it's very similar to that, but I think it all comes down to how the company itself it reacts to that issue. Like how fast do you respond to your clients? How fast can you rectify the situation? And I think if you are able to accomplish that and you communicate quickly to your client, no matter how pissed they are, I think that client at the end of the day will appreciate that,
I,
and they'll
I
probably trust you even more.
I agree, and I say that to all my clients. There's a million plumbing companies out there. The difference is with us, I seem to think we take pride, we respond fast, and I tell everybody, we're all human, and as humans, we all make mistakes, and I find people's true colors all come out when mistakes happen. When mistakes happen, how are you rectifying it? But the reality is too, is the end user, because of the inconvenience sometimes, you're the bad one, even though it was beyond your control. Like you said, even with Jobtable, right? And we've had our clients that get extremely upset if there is a hiccup in the server. And these are, without disclosing, we use, the biggest server company, I think, on the planet, right? Most secure, biggest server company on the planet. So, we've had those clients as well that it doesn't matter if the server goes down, we're the bad ones and we respond, and and I get it, it hinders their business, but we don't manufacture the servers, right? We don't handle, we don't handle the servers, right?
And look, I can't remember, knock on wood, I can't remember the last time we've had an outage, but it does happen. If any software company, any company says, oh, there's never going to be issues, big red flag, right? It happens. But in my experience, when this stuff happens, the faster you respond and communicate, no matter how pissed that client would be, if you can communicate fast enough and explain it very honestly, I feel like the relationship grows and builds from that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So
I agree. I always think honesty is the best policy, and also, like you said, Kosta, I think that's why a lot of our reviews are the way it is because we do respond fast. And whether it's something you want to hear or something you don't want to hear, we're just brutally honest. Look, it was a mistake, or look, this is beyond our control. We're all over it. We will keep you updated. And it's the same in the construction business, right? Again, I had an argument with the contractor, the GC on the job, and I told him straight up, what do you want me to do? I don't manufacture parts, right? If I own that manufacturing company, believe me, it'd be very hard to get a hold of me.
Yeah, for sure. Last question on this though. Do companies generally, when you're pricing a job, do you price in the cost of a warranty, like at 1 to 3%, like for this, or should
Not,
they?
look,
Is that a smart thing to do, or
well, it is. It is. Obviously to always cover yourself. But the reality is, at least in the world that I'm in, that 2-3% is the make or break on winning a job. And if I were to sit there and say, well, I factored in 2% just in case, something happens on a piece of equipment or something happens to a fixture, and it's not our problem and we have to have a callback, they're going to look at us. And getting back to that initial comment, it's just the cost of doing business, right? And I know people listening that are in this world, it's the same with estimating, right? So you spend all this time estimating, to estimate a mid-rise, high-rise building, takes like a month, to go through all the drawings and scale. And then all of a sudden they come out with a new drawing that basically supersedes the old drawing. So now everything you did before, you got to basically start from scratch again. You got to do that. And then at the end of the job, it's like, hey, how'd it go? It's like, oh, you guys were, 3% high. It's like, man, we just spent 6 weeks, estimating this. And they literally look at you like, okay, why are you saying that? It's the cost of doing business, right? So the reality is this, man. The reality is this, is that if you want to work on a 10%, 20%, 30% margin, the reality is you're going to have some good ones, you're going to have some bad ones, but to meet those targets are extremely hard. And especially if you're running a reputable company where you do care, right? Like, look, I have friends too and I don't agree with it, that they do a job and, if it's something that happened on a piece of equipment or whatever it may be, it's the last of their worry. They got paid, they moved on, and I hate that. I truly hate that, right? And it comes back to, money isn't everything in a job. It's the way you respond, and I think that's what a lot of times sets you apart from the other guy, but the problem is you have to be able to get in and at least do a job or 2 jobs so that they can see your workmanship, right? So you're not just a number, you're not just another company pricing, right? So once you have a relationship with somebody and something happens and you respond fast, that's why they always call you back, because it's like, yeah, these guys, no problem. Anytime you call them, they're quick to respond, right? So,
yeah. All right, so this leads nicely into the next topic, which I wanted to talk about, is sticking with suppliers, but negotiating supplier pricing. So I feel like most trades businesses, they treat supplier pricing as just a fixed cost, which is non-negotiable. Like the typical company, they'll fight a customer over like a $200 line item, but never once ask their plumbing supplier, let's just say, or electrical supplier for a better rate, even though they're a repeat predictable customer. So in your experience, like starting out where you guys did to now, at what was the point where you actually had that conversation with your suppliers to negotiate pricing and get better rates?
volume, right? And it's sad to say, when we first started out, 2 guys in a truck, we were
How
spending
far will you get if you try to have that conversation too early with a supplier?
Not very far. Not very far. This is the reality, right? It's not very far. Like, we have our preferred. We have a lot of suppliers that we use, and we have to. And obviously, we have our preferred. And I notice, I notice once you reach a certain threshold, the suppliers actually come after you. Even manufacturers come after you. I can't tell you how many manufacturers come through my office every month, right? They want to set up meetings. They want to set up lunches. They want to set up a golf round. Obviously, just like anything, they're in sales, right? So they're trying to sell you more. And I have these conversations almost weekly, right? Because when we send out a job, we send it out to multiple suppliers. Now, in my field, when it's a bid inspect job, everybody's quoting the same material, the same equipment. So when the quotes come back from the suppliers, and one supplier is at $10,000 for an item, and the other supplier for the exact same item is $11,000, you kind of sit there and you say, okay, I know that this one supplier is trying to make a lot more money. And then all the suppliers then say, they call you and it's like, hey, how did it go? It's like, yeah, I got the job. It's like, oh, okay, so like, are we going to get the order? It's like, no, you were higher. It's like, oh, let me re-quote it. And yeah, I have those conversations all the time, right? With our suppliers. And especially, we also have price specific for jobs. So for example, if I'm buying cast iron at, let's just use a number, any number. If I'm buying a length of 4-inch cast iron at $50 on my day-to-day, when I go to do a building and I have to, and I have, $1 million plus in cast iron that I have to carry, that's where I hold the keys now. And that's where I can go to all my suppliers and just say, you want these orders? You got to sharpen your pencil. $50 a length is not going to cut it, right?
Yeah. So it's really volume at that point.
It comes down to, it's two things. It's volume, and your reputation. Okay? So we pay our bills on time, man. I look at my suppliers like my silent business partners. And I tell all my suppliers that. Without you, I have no business. I have no material to buy and install, right? But also, without us, you have no business. You can have all the materials in the world, but if you don't have us, you have nobody you're selling to. So we are intertwined. We are silent business partners. You need us and we need you. Yes, you're a business. You need to make some money. We're a business. We need to make some money, right? So be fair with us, because the more fair you are, the sharper your number is, the more we're going to buy, right? So I always say to everybody, especially people are greedy, right? I find a lot of people, especially when you're doing the larger jobs, and I've been asked this from, friends or even people in like Jobtable users. They're like, okay, well, I'm breaking into this industry. What do you recommend? Because I normally work on a 25% margin. I start laughing. I'm like, man, on $1 million job, if you're going in with a 25% markup, the chances are you're not going to get the job. This is the reality. The bigger the job, the less the margins. Some of the biggest contractors in North America, for example, right? You take anyone, United States, Canada, doesn't matter. When you're on a multi-million-dollar job, your margin is very little. I know a lot of these GCs that, for example, you're putting up a bridge, or you're doing tunnels or whatever it is. Sure, it's a $150 million contract, right? But they're working on 2.5%, 3%. Sure, 2.5%, 3% on 150 million. It's a good chunk of change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is where people have to understand that the more you do, the less the margin. It's the same with the supplier side, right? The more volume you buy, the better margin you're going to get. And also too, suppliers, they don't like the tire kickers. Like one of my suppliers here, which is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest in all of Canada, they're actually starting to cut people's accounts, because they call us for pricing all the time. We use all these resources and they're not giving us orders. So I'll tell you what, you're going right to the bottom. Anytime you request something, if we have free time, we'll send you a price. If we're busy, go buy somewhere else, because that's typically what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of GPOs, like group purchasing organizations? Is this a thing in Canada? So maybe this is U.S. specific, but as I was looking into some of this stuff, so a GPO, and I've never heard of this until then. That's why I was curious if you did. So a group purchasing organization, it pools the buying power of many contractors and builders to negotiate with suppliers. So like there's these organizations that you can join, and basically, you purchase through the organization, and typically you save about 13% on supplies through these organizations? You
No,
never heard of it?
I've never heard of it. While you're saying that, the one thing I can see it makes sense is the supplier is doing like a GPO, right? So they get together because they're all buying, for example, like on the plumbing side, okay? So, you got like 3 manufacturers that are manufacturing copper, okay? They got to buy them by containers, okay? So let's say this guy's taking 7 containers, this guy's taking 6 containers, this guy's taking 4 containers. Well, if they pool them together and they say, look, we're going to, factor that in all in one bulk order, sure, they probably all get them cheaper. You know what I mean? So I can see that working. But the reality is on a contractor side, unless I don't know, I'd have to look into it. But on a contractor side, I don't see how that works. And I'll speak specifically for my industry because that's what I know. I don't know if that would work because I know the suppliers too. Like again, for my industry, they work on tight margins. Like copper. They're giving you a off list price. They're giving you like a 9. Again, if you have good buying power, you're at like a 92%, discount. Which means that, they're probably buying it at a 94% discount. So, and I know this for a fact because I have relationships with certain manufacturers, and even the manufacturer says, like, obviously, I can't give you my price. Because we have a deal with the manufacturer. But when you get your price, let me look at it and I'll tell you whether it's good or not. And so we'll get the price from the supplier and then I'll show them because I do have a relationship with them and this is in confidentiality. And they tell me, they're like, yeah, man, they're not making much. And think about what they have to do. They have to buy from us. They have to send a truck to go pick it up, bring it into their warehouse, right? Tag it that they've received the order. Process paperwork, right? Then put it on another truck, schedule a delivery with you, right? And then go and deliver it.
Yeah.
So again, it's the cost of doing business. Everybody has to make a little bit of money. Now, I've seen people like somebody me and you do know, Kosta, and what they do is they just bypass the suppliers. They go straight to these manufacturers. And, like I got a friend of mine, he like with rebar, he goes straight to the source and he says, okay, fuck it. I got $500,000 that I can afford to, because I use rebar a lot. I need 50,000 on this job, 50,000 on that job, and I use this almost every day. So I'm just going to spend $500,000 and just buy, containers of rebar, leave it in my, at my yard, and every time I need it, I'm just going to pick from there because if I do it the traditional way, then I'm, again, I'm spending 15% more on rebar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So just to wrap up this topic, if you had one last like piece of advice or tip for a new company, let's say less than $1 million in revenue, what would your advice or takeaway be with them in regards to the supplier? Like wait till you reach a certain threshold? Is it worth
No.
just having the discussion no matter what? What's the worst that can happen? They say no.
The best advice I have is, look, your account manager, again, doesn't matter what industry of construction you're in, your account manager from your supplier has got to be truly like almost like your best friend in the industry, right? They want sales from you and you want good pricing from them and you want the backing from them. So even if you're a new company that opened up, this is exactly what we did, is we took our account manager out for lunch, and this is a time that, I was only like 23 years old, and met them face to face, let them get to know you, let them get to know, like see your true colors, your honesty, what you're trying to build, and just be upfront with them and say, I need your support. Because a lot of times those account managers, they're the ones that have the keys to give you better discounts, right? And sometimes, yes, they have to get special permission from above them, but the best thing to do is to treat them like your silent business partner, because truly they are. Without them, you're not getting supplies, right? Or you're not getting the best price, right? So it's just like anything else. If a client comes up to you and says, look, I want to use you, You're a little bit higher. Is there anything you can do, right? 99% of the time, if you like that client, they're nice, they're upfront with you, they're kind, you know they're going to pay you. What do? It's like, you know what, buddy, I'm going to help you out. Don't worry about it, right? So you got to be the same way with your suppliers.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I think we have time for one last topic here. Switching gears a little bit. So a wave of trade business owners are phasing out right now. Like a big percentage of companies that started in the 80s and 90s, they are aging out, and a lot of them have no real succession plan. And I know we both know number of these companies currently. So like you have someone who started their company, let's say in the 90s, 80s, they're retiring. They don't have the capacity to do this anymore. They want out, but there's no like maybe they don't have a succession plan. There's no one to pass it on to. There's no sales process. So there's a lot of businesses that are either just shutting down because there's no exit plan, or they're just getting bought out, which is happening a lot right now by private equity companies. So what would you like in your case? A lot of people don't think about exit. They don't think about building a business to sell. They're just thinking about the day to day, the grind, and just obviously making money today. But at the end of the day, no matter what business you're in, every single business in the world exchanges hands. Whether that means the owner dies and the business folds, whether it means the business goes bankrupt, whether it means you pass it on to someone, you pass away, whatever it is, a business always exchanges hands. Is this something that you think about personally? Like, do you think that far ahead? And one last stat, just to show you here. So in construction specifically, M&A, so acquisition activity, rose from 55% in 2024 to close to 70% in 2025. And you are seeing a lot of this now, and this is driven by a lot of private equity companies who are rolling up a lot of contracting companies because the boomers are phasing out. So I'll stop there. Do you think that far ahead in your business?
I always do. I always think about what the future looks like. We've had offers to be acquired before. I just personally in construction, the way the offers typically, like the structure of it, I don't like, because they want you to stay on, and there's like a payment plan and you have to reach these targets. And I've seen too many horror stories, because once a private equity company comes in, they want you to do it their way, but it doesn't work with the clientele that you've been working with and reaching those numbers every year. Look, you got to be open. You got to be mindful. Obviously, I have 3 kids. Charlie has 3 kids. So I always look at, like, are we going to get our kids involved? Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to hand it off to somebody? And I guess where I lie on this, because I talk about this, like a lot. And I guess where I lie on this is when the opportunity presents itself, whatever makes the most sense at that time. Like today might be the most sense to sell, right? Next year might make the most sense to, get somebody involved, right? Because like one of my succession plans I always have in my head, like, I got a really good team here. And one of my succession plans is like, look, man, if somebody steps up to the plate, which a lot of them have shown a lot of true colors, to the point that they can do what we do and run this company successfully, then why sell it? Why do this? Why do that? I take a full step back, or we take a full step back. The company continues to run, and I just continue to make a salary. You know what I mean? Or do I hand it off to our kids, right? Or do we go to sell? So I always say, it's just like anything else in life. When that time comes, yes, you have to be prepared with, plan A, plan B, plan C, but what used to be plan A might now be your plan C, and plan C might be plan A, And I guess it's all in that time that, the opportunity presents itself, right? Or when you're ready to take that step back. And what I think with a lot of these boomers is that they are phasing out. And, one of like my old boss and Charlie's old bosses, he just decided to close up, even though he had, his son-in-law in the company and stuff, because his son-in-law just didn't have what it takes to run it like him, right? Now, I can easily sit there and say, well, I would have, taken it to market and let somebody acquire you. But also, too, people, there's one thing to factor with these boomers too, Kosta, is we are a very cash flow sensitive industry, which means that, you might have $4 million in receivables and $2 million in payables. You know what I mean? And sometimes to wind down a company is just, okay, this is the last project, right? I'll wait for the money to come in. I'll pay the suppliers. And now I'm left with my 2 million. And there's, this is something that I'll live off of for the rest, for the rest of my life, or this is my retirement plan, So I don't think there's any right or wrong way. I just think that it's all specific to the person, like the individual's needs and where they're at in that stage of life, right? Because like like our old boss that we're talking about, by the time he decided to close up, he was 73. He probably just, I want nothing more to do with this, man. Let me just wind this down. I don't want to talk about people with selling. I don't want to stay on for 2 years. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I just want to, enjoy what I built, take my money and, fuck off to an island and nobody bother me anymore, right?
Yeah. I think there's one way I like to look at this is, as someone who's been on, the side of having a business acquired. So I have that experience, not in construction, but no matter what your intentions are, if you are planning to exit or not, there's a big difference between how sellable your company is, which is how reliant that business is on the owner. Like, if, for example, most companies, if the owner is gone for a couple of weeks, a business doesn't function, right? Like there's too much reliance on the owners, and businesses like that are not sellable. Or if they are, the valuation of those businesses is very, very low. And so
And
whether
that's
you
typically construction.
that's typically construction, but it doesn't have to be, I don't think. And so whether you plan to sell or not, or you're just growing your business and you plan to do this forever, I think it's important to just plan for any possible scenario. And like I said earlier, knowing that objectively every single business exchanges hands, I think it's very important to optimize for a potential exit down the road. And I think if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, your business is always for sale, right? And so to make it sellable and to increase your valuation, make your business run on processes as much as possible so it can still run without you. That will just give you the best chance at a very successful exit. Because not every exit is successful, right? You can have an exit for next to nothing and you make some money and that money's gone in a year. So to maximize the exit, you really got to think about running your business on processes and having like clean systems. I know we talk about this almost every single episode, but it always comes back to systems and processes, because that at the end of the day is what's going to make your business sellable. And I think that's where a lot of, especially construction companies, like you said, that's where their valuations come in way, way lower than what they typically expect, because the business is no longer valuable when the owner is not there, because there's no systems and processes in place.
Very well said. Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah, so I don't know. With that said, again, your business is going to exchange hands. Think about processes. Think about using software. Think about, if you're not on Jobtable, try Jobtable, try another software, but add systems in your day to day. I think this will go a long way, more than you realize. Especially, we're just starting out, decades down the road, when you are in that discussion of an exit or thinking about stepping back. Something important to think about. You should always have in the back of your head, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Very well said. Very well said.
All right. With that, let's wrap it there.
I'm going to put it on you. I've done it once.
You've already asked me. I already gave mine.
You've asked me too. So we got to do it.
Got to do it. Another one now?
Another one. Billboard. For everybody to see. What would it say?
What would it say? Well, my first one was no plan Bs. Second one is, so if I had to put on a billboard for every single entrepreneur, contractor, it would say next to no plan Bs, it would be ready, fire, and then aim. Ready, fire, aim. What does that mean? So most companies, most owners, most entrepreneurs, they get ready, they have an idea, they're thinking about something. Now they're aiming, they're figuring it out, they're going through the plans. And once that plan is perfected, then they fire. The problem is most people get stuck in the aim. They're trying to perfect it. They're trying to get the business plan and figure things out. And you'll always be stuck in this aim phase where, you'll never get to fire. So what I kind of live on is if I have an idea, I'm ready for it, I'm firing. I'm going to figure it out as I'm shooting. Don't overthink, just do it. Ready, fire, aim.
You heard it here first, boys and girls.
All right, with that, appreciate everyone. If you got this far, we do appreciate all of our listeners. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever it is. And if you are a contractor looking to streamline things, looking to set up processes, do check out jobtable.com. There's a 14-day free trial. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly. More than happy to assist. So jobtable.com, get started with a free trial. There's no credit card required, and you get full access. You can play around with it and check it out. With that, John, always a pleasure.
Always, man. Always. Thank you, guys.
We'll chat soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye.